Hello everyone, my name is Carolina and this is a video about the CGL community and what it is and the very basics. So many people by watching this video you might already know what all of this is. Like, you may already be like, yeah, this is common knowledge. It's really not, and this is more of a I don't know what's going on, please explain this to me kind of video. I'm trying to fix my hair. It's such a mess. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah. This is basically a I don't know what's going on, please explain it to me kind of video. And I'm gonna explain to you some glossary words, some abbreviations, and stuff like that might help you follow along in the conversation. Because if we are gonna talk about and you're gonna want to learn about this, you might want to know the words and know the lingo of the environment you are talking about. So if you are a totally beginner and you have no idea what any of this is, then take notes. If you are already familiar with this and just watching for the heck of it, welcome. You can watch if you can watch. Yeah. Okay, so let's start at the very top. CGL is, I'm just gonna call this CGL because it's caregiver little. CGL, caregiver little. I'm not gonna call it like other shortenings that might be, because it's the most broad term that I can think of, because the other are more specific. This is more specific. Anyway, to start about what it is. So CGL is under the BDSM term. So to understand this completely, you need to already know what BDSM is. So let's start there. If you are a complete beginner and you don't know what any of this is, and you hear the word BDSM, you might start thinking about 50 Shades of Grey and contracts and the Red Room, and that's not accurate at all. Put anything that has 50 Shades of Grey in your mind away. So not an actual representation of anything in the community. It's not about that at all. Let's talk about letters first. It's actually several, BDSM is a BDDSSM. The BD stands for bondage and discipline. The DS stands for dominance and submission. Bleh. My Norwegian tongue is like English. But yeah, BD is a DS, dominant submission. And the SM stands for sadism and masochism. Masochism? Again, another word that doesn't easily roll off my tongue. But that's the part. And really listen to those words, like bondage and discipline. It's about discipline, not only for the submissive, but also for the dom. Because it's all about keywords in any BDSM relationship is consent, respect, trust, communication, limits, boundaries, and safety. Part of the BDSM community can be non-con, means they play non-consensual, but it's still consent there. It's all about trust and you're both in on the game. If both parties are not in on it, it's not a part of BDSM community. It's just rape. It's not a part of this at all. It doesn't support non-consensual stuff. So now that we know that, there are other channels that might explain BDSM and that part of the world better. One of my personal channels that I like to watch about that part is called What's the Safe Word. I will link them in the description. They are hilariously funny and I recommend everyone to watch them, even if you're not into this yourself. You might learn something And even though you might not be into that yourself, you might just learn a few new things about people. So yeah, that is what BDSM stands for and the general broad umbrella there. I'm not gonna go too deeply into that because that's not what we're here about. Then we're gonna go to the CGL, what that stands for. What this community is more about is, obviously CGL stands for Caregiver and Little, which I explained 2 seconds ago. And it is I have written this down so that I word it so I don't do this too often. So I'm trying to make this educational, you know? Yeah, so Caregiver Little is, CGL, is a relationship in which a person is the caregiver or daddy or mommy. Like, it's usually called daddy or mommy, but is a caregiver. And the other is like a little, they are in a childlike headspace. Notice they're not a child. It's no children are harmed in the doing of this. Childlike. It is not a relationship between an actual parent and a child, so it's not incest. It is nothing to do with that. There's a usual misconceptions like, oh, incest, daddy, I couldn't imagine fucking my dad. Like, no, it's not my actual parents. That's weird. No, that's not okay. That's gross. So this is not a relationship between an actual parent and their child, or a minor if sexual. That's a whole other video discussion about minors in the community because they exist. But it's like a gray zone and it's a discussion that is saved for another video basically, because that's a whole other topic. It is a form of BDSM relationship that may or may not involve sex, but often plays with childlike things such as stuffed animals, pacifiers, etc. That's the definition. So it may or may not be sexual, which is a very big part of the understanding of this. Is that it's about split about 50-50. For some it's sexual, for some it's not. Both are equally as valid, as long as it goes under the consent, the communication, and all the other things I mentioned earlier, it's completely fine. And then we have some glossary terms, because if you're gonna do this, you may need to know some words and phrases that might be keywords for you. So now we already know what CGL is and what the community is about, like generally speaking. Then we have like the more specific terms for individual relationships. Like DDLG, you probably heard about. DDLG is Daddy Dom Little Girl. Then we have DDLB, which is Daddy Dom Little Boy. Then we have MDLG, which is Mommy Dom Little Girl. And MDLG, which is Mommy Dom Little Boy. So you see, it's like, are you a mommy? Are you a daddy? Are you a little boy or a little girl? It's all about that part. Like basically putting the genders into the play. CGL is more the gender neutral term, while the more specific is more about talking about specific relationships, like DDLG and the, like you get what I'm talking about. And then we have the term you might see a lot in this community, that is ABDL, which used to be a bigger umbrella than it is now. The term ABDL has been active for like 2 decades now, so it's not a new thing. Like 2 decades, ABDL has been a big umbrella that everything has been shoved under, but if you listen to the letters, AB, adult baby, DL, diaper lover, you see how that doesn't apply to everyone, because not everyone likes diapers. For some it's like, that's not my jam, but you know, if it makes you happy, you can do it. So now that's become a not a separate community, it's still a part of the CGL community because it's still a CGL relationship and it's still that, but it's like its own, like they are their own thing. They often want to talk to others in the AB, like everything is into cliques. Even in high school, everything is cliques. Even in the vanilla non-sexual world, non-kink world, not into anything, it's all about cliques. Like, you usually talk to people in your class more than you talk in your school, more than you talk to someone in another school, even though you're both students. You know what I'm talking about? But they're still very much part of us, and they just do their own thing. Their little age is usually much younger than someone who is not in that community. My little age is more from 3 to 5. I don't do the diaper thing, and I'm not a baby. I'm not in baby space. I say baby space. I can imagine some of you are like, what? We have baby spaces, which is like, you know, you're a baby. You don't talk. You don't. Your mental, like your little age is basically a child. You're a baby. Then you have like a toddler stage. It's not called like toddler space, it's just called little space. Everything is little space. Even baby space is like its own term, just mostly just for communication's sake. We have all of these letters and all of these terms for the sake of communication, so that everyone within the community knows what they're talking about. Like, oh yeah, and some people are like, I'm 3 to 5, doesn't mean I am always 3 or always 5. It might be, that's just mine. Some people have from 0 to 6. So someday they might feel like much younger, and they feel like they're like from, I'm like 1 now. They might say to their dom like, so I slipped into baby space. It's mostly just a way to communicate, this is how I'm feeling. So keep that in mind, that anything about this, you need to talk within yourselves, like, what does this mean? But yeah. And then we have like little space. The term little space is obviously what you slip into, is a headspace. I like to explain to it to beginners as an altar. It's still you, it's still how you are, and it's still you. So don't misunderstand me completely here, but it's like you have an alter ego, and that alter ego is younger. You don't actually think you're a child. You don't think you are actually. When I'm in little space, I don't think I'm 3. It's just how I feel. It's just my little age. Is like, I don't think I'm a child. I don't think, it's not about pretending to be a child. I'm not pretending that I am 3. It's about being in a safe headspace. It's your safe space. And then we have to think about why people do this. Some people do this just because they find it interesting, they find it fun, they find it cute, they just feel happy here, which is completely okay, and so forth. Like, it's all good. Then we have those that use it more for therapy reasons, and they are usually the ones that create an alt with, like, because like it's all complicated and it's all very simple at the same time. So I hope you are getting the image I'm trying to make. Then we have the term little, big. It's when you're little, like, it's something you can see, like, one, if you are in the CGL relationship, you will say to me like, hey, I'm gonna go, I'm little right now, so thing. And again, it's a way to communicate. It's like, and if they might think you might be in a little space, but you're not, you're still big, you haven't slipped, but you haven't retracted into that headspace, you just, they have mistaken for some reason, you can be like, oh no, it's okay, I'm big. So, you know, it's all about communication here. And then we have the term middle, which is, no, it's not that you're slipping between middle and big. The little is little space. But if you are a middle, is about middle space, which is something that some people have. It's when, okay, let's just use the term alter ego for now, just so we can, again, so that we can communicate. Your alter is little, okay? It's not exactly an alter, but you know what I'm talking about. The most common age for a little is from 0 to 8. That's the most agreed on. Obviously that can vary for some people in some places. Like, there are different, even though we are one big community, there's still like, geographically we're far apart, and it's hard for everyone to have the same phrases and the same definitions. So, but the most agreed on little age is from 0 to 8. And then we have middle, which is middle space. They're usually more teenager. They might be an adult physically, but their headspace is generally from 9 to like 13, 15. They don't really have, I haven't heard a commonly agreed on term for middle space when it comes to age. Some people say it stops at 13, and above that it doesn't even count. Some people stop it at 15, some people stop it at 17, which is very rare. I have so far not yet heard anyone being like, oh yeah, my middle age is 17. I've never heard that. It might be a thing. There might be some. I have no idea. It's a big world. It's probably some. Yeah, I have everything written up, by the way, so I don't forget anything. But that's a term, so you know, middle is more like teen, preteen, age headspace, while little is more from 0 to 8. So then you talk about something, oh, I'm a little, oh, then what age, what's your little age? Then you can be like, oh, mine is 3 to 5. And be like, oh, okay. So you kind of know where they're at. Which is a smart way to start a conversation in this community is, where's your headspace at when you slip? And then we have the term age player and age regressor, which they are also umbrella terms. A lot of stuff go under this, but basically, there are differences, and those differences again are mostly for communicative reasons. Okay, let's go over age regressor first. An age regressor are those, most often, not always, but most often those that are in the CGL for more therapeutic reasons. Those that have maybe had a shitty childhood or have had traumatic events affect them, and little space is their safe space, and it's more of a, this is what makes me relax and makes me feel, and I have like, they're more into this for to help their depression or to help their anxiety or to help their trauma and to overcome it. While obviously you can be completely fine mentally and still be an age regressor for just a way to relieve stress. But basically an age regressor is mostly someone that goes back because of stress, because of anxiety, because of stuff like that. Well, an age player is more about you play with it. It's for fun. It's not that it's not that much of a therapeutic reason behind it. Again, sometimes people can be both. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I do both. I'm both age regression and I do age play. Like it's more often, but not always. Again, age players are also often the ones that do this sexually, but again, not everyone, not always. So this is about a conversation. When you are in a conversation with someone and you are curious, they're not under any obligation to tell you, because it's more often not a very private thing. But if you are in an open conversation and they are willing to talk about it, it's okay to ask like, oh, do you do this sexually? Is it just like a way to carry yourself? I don't know. And it's just knowing these terms they don't define you. they're more of a way to talk and communicate and to talk with each other about, so to be there for mutual understanding. And then we have, obviously, and then we have gender play, which is like okay, gender play can be a lot of stuff, but in the CGL community it's mostly if the little, like say if it's a boy who is little, like is a male, when they're big they are male, they're man, they are going about their manly life. I don't know, but when they slip into little space they kind of switch gender, like they are like they basically like, oh, when I'm in little space I'm more feminine, I prefer to refer to myself as a little girl. You know, there's nothing complicated about that. It's all about preferences and, you know, the headspace. It's an alter ego. This is why I said alter ego in the beginning. It's not entirely correct, but it can be seen as that. The alter ego can be anything. Like, I mean, then now we're going to kitten play and doggy play, like everything. So I think it's actually a very fitting thing to say. It's like an alter ego, but it's still you. You know. Obviously, again, this is a conversation you need to have with individual people. But for the sake of conversation right now, then we need to talk about the term 24/7, which is also a term in the BDSM community outside of the CGL world. 24/7 is when the power dynamic between sub and dom is 24/7. Some people like to be more in control. I must also mention now that I refer to what I talked about in the beginning about feeling safe and consent and knowing limits and boundaries and having that trust and stuff. It still applies. So we can talk about that later. But the 24/7 is mostly when they are the dominant. Some people just feel better when they're in control, and some people feel better when they don't have to do that. It can be something as little as being like, hey, can I go to the bathroom? And you don't just, yeah, sure. Like, they're not being like, no, you cannot, because It's just a matter of basically like a dynamic. Basically, it's about how you feel, like it's how the relationship keeps going. It's basically dynamic. It's everyone is different, and not everyone is in the 24/7. Some people like to only have the power dynamic of dom and sub when they are in little space and when they are in like a dom caregiver space. Yes, the doms often also have a headspace. So you see what I mean? Like 24/7, not everyone does that, but it's very common in the CGL community that even when they are not in a little space and they're big, but they still respect their dom. You know what I mean? Like they're still with their dom, like they're still my dominant, even though I'm not little right now. And then we have, it's about vulnerability. Like, some people feel very vulnerable when they're little, and like, especially since I am a little, I can say that it's very scary sometimes to be in this big scary world, and having the judgment and having all of that coming on you can be very hard. So if you find out someone is a little or something, try to go gently about it. Like, if you have questions, you can ask them, hey, I have some questions, maybe you can explain to me. But try to not be so harsh about it, because it is a very vulnerable thing to do. And like, it's a reason. It's not, oh yeah, I'm an Aries and I'm also a little. Like, it's not usually brought up in average conversation unless you know you're in the right community and conversation to do so. So please respect that. If you ever in that conversation you find out they are a little, please just be respectful, because it is a very vulnerable thing to admit. It's called coming out of the toy box. It's like coming out of the closet if you're gay. It's like, if you come out as little to people, you're basically coming out of the toy box, which I find very cute. But if you find out someone is little, just make sure you keep in mind that for many that's a very vulnerable thing to admit, and they're very vulnerable when they slip into little space. So just show respect and be respectful in general of people. Like, we're just people, we're just humans, we're just as individual as anyone else. So, and then we are talking about, okay, I need to also bring up limits and boundaries, because many people also have the misconception that the dom has an abusive role. It's not abuse in any way. As I mentioned earlier, I'm just gonna repeat it because it's so important. Consent, respect, trust, communication, limits and boundaries. And when it comes to the trust and respect part, yes, the little has to respect the dom. That's part of being a submissive. They are your dominant. But the dom also has to respect the little, and that's where all the safety and trust comes into play. Is that just because they are your dom doesn't mean that you don't have a say in what they do. This is where you have talked about it from before. I think that's where 50 Shades of Grey got the contract idea from, that you're both on the same page. This is where safe words come into play. In any kind of BDSM relationship, a safe word is the most important thing to have. Because as soon as, like, for many people it's a very big thing, especially in a 24/7 relationship. But it's very, very important. Any kind of dominance and power play and power dynamic into play, there should be a safe word. And this is where the limits to, is this abuse or is this consensual, is, let's say, because we have, for many it's like, in the CGL community there are something called brats, and brats are, you know, they might be a little bratty sometimes, and they might do things to get attention from their dom. Like, let's say they feel kind of like, and then, oh whoops, I spilled this milk, oh no. And the dom, maybe they lost their patience, maybe they overreacts. And let's say one of the punishments for the little is spanking, which is something we can talk about, like rules and stuff, in a later video. I'm gonna make a separate video on that. But it can be like they were aiming for more attention. They felt like the dom was ignoring them or something. They start to resist, but the dom just thinks, oh, they're just being more bratty by resisting. So they flip them over and they start spanking them anyway. If at any time the submissive feel like, I don't feel okay anymore, this is not okay, they don't feel safe, they don't feel, this is not what I wanted, then the safe word is said. Let's say the safe word is yellow. It's not like, as soon as the safe word is said, like, oh, yellow, then if the dom goes and continues to do the thing that makes the submissive feel unsafe and is not having fun anymore, then that's abuse. Like, many people, like, it's not an abusive relationship. That's the whole part. Consent. Some people like to be more dominant over than others. Some people don't like it at all. It's all about communication, and consent is the key. And to have a safe word is the most important part of any power dynamic whatsoever. Even if it's just a tiny power dynamic, like, it should be consensual and it should be safe. And yeah. So I'm gonna look to my little notepad and see if I have anything else I want to say before we go off. I think I've gone over everything right now. So that's it for this video. Subscribe if you want to see more of this. And leave a comment if you have any questions, or if you just want to join in on the conversation. Say hi to me, whatever. Just be in the comments. I'll read them. The only thing about the comments is basically be respectful. Keep in mind that, you know, respect is key even in this conversation. I want to keep my channel safe. A safe place to talk. And yeah, just even if you have a question, it's fine. Like, I completely understand why would you watch this video if you didn't have any questions. Like, you could just be watching me just for the sake of it, which is also fine. You can say hi to me anyway if you want to. Yeah. Comment, like the video, subscribe. Woo, I don't know. I don't have a proper ending to my channel yet, so I guess I'll talk to you guys later.